If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
So let's stay on Jalen Brunson. Let's keep the love for JB here. So Jalen Brunson says winning most improved player is not something he is focused on right now, though his name has been mentioned as among the top candidates for that award. Brunson is having one of the best, or not one of the best season of his career, definitely. His scoring totals have skyrocketed. A lot of his numbers have skyrocketed during his first season in New York. But speaking with the Daily News and Stephen Bondi, Brunson said it is not something he is worried about at this moment. He said, quote, "It's a unique award. It's not something I'm really focused on 100%. I don't really think about it, but if it's something that I win or achieve, I'll be very thankful, but it's not on the forefront of my mind." Tom Thibodeau was a lot more willing to campaign for Brunson when asked about it. He said, quote, "I think the one thing you can, when you look at him, wherever he's been, whether it's high school, college, the pros, there's been significant jumps every season. And that's a testament to him and his willingness to grow and learn and work. His work ethic is off the charts. He'll get better every year. And so we were confident that he could do this. He's improved his scoring by 8 points a game. He's taking twice as many threes. He's shooting almost 42% from three. He's getting to the line. He's doubled his free throw attempts. There are significant things that he's done. But I would say the most important thing is what he's contributed to winning, and that's always been his biggest attribute." Tibbs taking a page out of the Tommy Beer page, their book there, with all the stats, had the stats lined up and ready to go on what Jalen Brunson has done this season. So other candidates for this award include Lauri Markkanen, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Mikal Bridges, who, since he's been a Brooklyn Net, has played at an all-star level. So first, I'll ask you, if Jalen Brunson were to be most improved player, I know you kind of teased it earlier, you would not vote for Jalen Brunson at this moment in time?
It's close. Well, first and foremost, let me say Tibbs needs to watch film. Don't come at me with numbers. Only nerds care about numbers and stats and all that analytics garbage. Like I only go on the eye test and watching film a bunch of times. So
yeah, Tommy's saying, did he watch all the Jalen Brunson games two or three times before making his case for most improved player?
Exactly. And as he watched SGA and Lauri Markkanen, if not, his opinion's invalid. The most improved player award. The reason I think the thing working against Brunson is he was so good at this over the second half of last season. Right. Basically, since Luka went down, at the point Luka went down, December, I believe it was mid-December, all the way through January, had like a month where he was running the show, and he didn't average quite as lofty numbers as he did with the Knicks, but right around there. Luka came back, his numbers came down a little bit, but then he started ticking them up and up and up. Efficiency, production, points, plus minus were phenomenal last season. We know what happened in the postseasons, particularly that first playoff series against Utah basically showed this version of Jalen Brunson. So to me, most improved is a guy coming, doing something we didn't expect. So for that reason, I probably lean towards Markkanen. I think you can make also, no disrespect to Lauri Markkanen, you can make a very strong case for him just in terms of his increase in not only production but efficiency, carrying the Jazz to the 35, 38, 500 mark. Nobody had them at around 500 coming into the season, so I think he deserves a ton of credit. Mikal Bridges, I think, is a guy that should get far more. There's 3 games left in the season, so we'll see what happens. But I think you can make a really strong case that Bridges, deserves really strong. In other words, if he had been traded in the offseason and finished the season with the Suns, got traded to the Nets, and then did what he's doing with Brooklyn for a full season, I think he'd almost be a lock for the award. 23 games he's played with Brooklyn, averaging 27.6 points, almost 5 boards, 63.5 true shooting percentage. He's second in the league in total points scored post All-Star break. He's just ahead of Devin Booker. Embiid is the only player that scored more total points since the All-Star break. As an aside, that trade's looking really good for the Nets right now. Not only did they get rid of Kyrie Irving, addition by subtraction, we know what's going on in Dallas. We don't even have to talk about that.
Well, we're about to in the next segment. Yeah,
we will. But as far as what the Nets got back, not only did they get draft capital and kind of replenish their draft stock, But Bridges has been a monster. And just a really phenomenal player. So again, I just talked about why I think Brunson's deserving of the third team. I think, again, personally, these are the awards, so much subjectivity involved in the awards. What Brunson has done hasn't shocked me. I don't think it's quite as surprising. So it's not as quite a step up as what we've seen. Like, I did not see SGA averaging 32 points a game, over 50% shooting this year. Marketing, again, from around 14 to what he's doing on the boards as well, defensively with the Jazz. Then you have Bridges. So I probably wouldn't. I'd have to sit down and obviously really think about it. If I was going to cast a vote, I do not have a vote, but I don't think I would lean in one of those other three guys' directions, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think for me, the leaders in the clubhouse, I'll tell you what, I think Bridges' case is extremely compelling because it almost kind of presents a new definition of the award that we really kind of never have done. Usually it's been most improved from last season. But in this case, you almost have to say like most improved within a season. And to some degree, like when you think about most improved awards, like outside of maybe the NBA, when you think of like youth sports or you think about jobs, things like that, usually most improved award is for someone that improved over the course of a season, not necessarily from last season or last year to this year. So the fact that you had a guy who was averaging 17 points for one team, go to another team and average almost 28 points a game. He has 2 games with the Nets where he's scored over 40 points. Like you would think that, okay, he's improved over the course of the season, so maybe he's the guy that should get the award. So I think I would lean Bridges over Brunson. And to me, this may actually be one of the best crop of most improved player candidates I've seen them. Like you're talking about, 2 guys who were all-stars in Shai Gilgeous and Lauri Markkanen. One guy that should have been an all-star in Jalen Brunson. And another guy, Mikal Bridges, who's been playing like a top 10 player the last month and a half of the season. So these are all really great candidates to me. I just think with what we saw from Brunson last season, as you mentioned, and kind of what we were kind of expecting coming into the season, not to say that we thought the Knicks would maybe take the leap that he took, the Knicks had taken. But I think a lot of people thought that Brunson could take an individual leap that he has taken because he'd have more minutes, more shots, more opportunity to kind of run a team. So I think if you told me before the season these were going to be his numbers, I would have been like, oh, wow, that's great. And maybe I'd be pleasantly surprised. Maybe after the points are a little high, but I'd say, oh, wow, that's really good. But I would not have been shocked. Right. You would have told me that Lauri Markkanen, a guy who I've been a big fan of coming out of Arizona and early in his career, and I've been very disappointed in him. He was a player for like 3 seasons. I kept saying, oh, this guy's going to he's going to make his first All-Star game this year. And he kept disappointing. And to go from being, a kind of a role player, bit player in Cleveland, averaging 14 points a game to what he's been for the Utah Jazz, that to me is stunning. I did not see that coming. I love Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I may have been a guy who thought he could average 30 because I love him so much. But I know a lot of people did not expect what they saw from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this year. And I knew Bridges would get more shots and more opportunities, but I didn't think he'd be this good for Brooklyn. So I think that those guys would probably still be the leaders in the clubhouse. But Jalen Brunson doesn't take away from the fact that he still had an awesome season this year for the Knicks.
I totally agree. And the other thing with Markkanen, if I would have told you on April 4th that the Jazz would be a half game behind the Mavs, just 2 games back of the Timberwolves, that a lot of that has to do with Markkanen. Interestingly, as an aside, since we mentioned it, it was a good story at the beginning of the season, and it was a good story for most of the season. Now, if you're a Jazz fan, you're in no man's land. That's why I was surprised by kind of the direction Ainge took. Could they improve next year and jump up another 5-10 wins? I guess, they can build around the edges, but I think a lot of Jazz fans were hoping that they clear house, get rid of Gobert, get rid of Royce O'Neal, get rid of Donovan Mitchell, of course, and then be in the Wembanyama sweepstakes. They're nowhere near I'm sure they could get lucky in the lottery, but to walk away from this season with the 9th overall pick in the draft, let's say, is not what we expected. So that's good in one case when you're making the case for Lauri Markkanen. In terms of the Jazz future franchise, yes, they have a ton of draft capital, so they could trade for another player. They have a lot of ways to go, but they don't have it. They most likely won't have a top pick in this year's draft, which is interesting. I'll just say.
Yeah, to quote Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, never half-ass one thing, or two things, whole ass one thing. So they kind of did a half job. They were like, okay, we're going to strip it down, but we're not going to trade the rest of these veterans until it's too late. So like they traded, Mitch, Donovan Mitchell. They traded Gobert. They traded Royce O'Neal. And then they had all these other guys that were still viable players for them that would say, all right, what are you going to do with Conley? What are you going to do with the guy they got, Jordan Clarkson? Like, what are you going to do with some of these players? And a lot of these guys, they kept some of them. They still have on the team that they've still not gotten rid of. And because of that, the Jazz, and because of Markkanen's improved play this season, they never were able to really get themselves into the Wembanyama Sweet Six because they were too good. And instead of not letting that thing ride out, once they started off hot, he let it go up until the trade deadline, when then it started to appear, okay, I don't know if the playoffs are likely at this point. At that point, it was too late. So it was
Beasley, Vanderbilt, all those guys helped him too much.
And he also overvalued those guys. I mean, remember, he wanted a first-round pick for each of these players, and he only ended up getting one first-round pick for three of the guys he traded. He traded Conley, traded Vanderbilt, traded Beasley, and he's got all these guys are worth the first and only got one. So, and meanwhile, how many games of those guys win for the Jazz over the course of that time? So, in my opinion, it was a borderline disaster class from Danny Ainge in terms of team building and putting themselves in a position to really build. Because now you come into this draft, now, you got a million picks from the Timberwolves, so I'm sure they'll be fine for the next few years. But you come in to this draft now, and a draft that has some really impressive talent, but I think it's top heavy, if you ask me. Someone who follows draft. I think that once you get out of the top four, I think you're starting to kind of throw darts at the dartboard, and it gets a little scary. And the Jazz, who are a team that clearly need a lot of help, they could be looking at another season next season where now they have to strip down more veterans to try to rebuild this roster. So meanwhile, you got Lauri Markkanen, an all-star player on your team. Like, how many games are you going to lose with that guy playing at the level he's playing? So yeah, Jazz not in the best situation at this point. Maybe the Knicks getting the last laugh after all of that Donovan Mitchell trade fiasco and all the negotiations that happened with that. But we'll see what happens with the Most Improved Player award. I do think that it's a very impressive class. Brunson will be among the guys named. I don't know if he'll be a finalist, but I think he will be among the top 4 or 5 guys in the voting there.